Hey, good evening. Happy Friday for those of you on this side of the world, and happy Saturday for those of you on the other. Hey, Mark. Hey, Rickard. Good to see you both. I'm going to jump right in tonight. I've got three cases with little bits of information here. And I think I'm going to start with Samuel Bankman-Fried because that trial is over with. We know he was guilty. We went through, we reported on that. CoffeeZilla did a damn good job explaining the FTX collapse and the reasons why it was appropriate that SBF was charged. Okay. Hey Liam, hey, look at the trees. It's good to see everyone. Okay, thank you for the reminder. And look at that, a banner, but I did have to be reminded. So there you go. Anyway, let's start then. Let's start with Samuel. All right. Samuel, as we know, he was convicted in late in 2023 in November for his financial crimes, the collapse of FTX for stealing billions from customers. FTX collapsed and went into bankruptcy. There was congressional hearings in regards to it, reporting on it back and forth. Okay, and now after a little bit of a delay, and he's been in prison waiting for his actual sentencing. He was remanded to custody. He did come to his sentencing hearing in a light brown prison garb, uh, and he showed up. The prosecution wanted a very severe penalty of 40 to 50 years. Now, there's a lot of talk back and forth, and some uh, in the financial papers that I read, in the financial articles and all, are really saying that he didn't get enough time. But when I tell you what he finally ended up with, let's just keep in mind that Bernie Madoff got 120 years and died in jail, of course. And the Theranos woman got 11 years for her fraud, 11 plus. Okay. Thursday's hearing actually put an underline and an exclamation point on the downfall of Samuel Bankman-Fried, and it actually held to light a few idiosyncrasies of his that actually didn't go too well in the sentencing. There were points that the judge made that were quite poignant in regards to the fear of Samuel Bankman-Fried being able to go out and do this again. Because the one thing that he has not done is acknowledge that that he stole from anyone or that what he did was wrong. He calls them bad choices, unfortunate circumstances. His attorney said that he should only get 5 to 10 years based on the crimes because he's no Bernie Madoff. He had no malicious intent. He's a good do-gooder who only wanted the best for everybody. And yet, if we recall the trial, all of his associates testified against him, that he had full knowledge of everything that he was doing. So it kind of played on deaf ears a little bit. It was a nice speech that the defense gave. They said he always had good intent. He's a good-hearted person. That the way that he is expressing himself, that we shouldn't take too much on it. It's a personality quirk or two. I do believe he said autism. However, knowledge of the laws and the crimes would not actually pertain to any of that, and not taking full accountability. Even though he says he's sorry for those that are hurt and he wants everybody to get paid back, it is his contention that everything was still liquid, and if he had been allowed to continue, he would have pulled money from here, there, and everywhere, which is what he was doing illegally to begin with, to make sure that everybody got paid. He just doesn't seem to understand, even now in his sentencing hearing, that you have businesses set up separately and you cannot, without the proper reporting and regulation, take from one company and give to another. You don't get to take the tax benefits of setting up a business a certain way and then just do whatever you want. Okay, there are regulations that are involved. And some people are saying, hey, if he came back, like everybody would have got their money and everything would have been fine. But not so. Actually, John Ray said to actually believe that just is a fairy tale. To believe that FTX was solvent or would have been solvent or Almeida would have survived any of this after is just a fantasy. It's a fairy tale. And it actually shows you the depth of deniability that Samuel Bankman-Fried will go to. He still will not acknowledge. He still says that everything was just fine. All he needed to do was manipulate a few things here and there. He doesn't use the word manipulate, but that's my term for how he was tossing money all over the place. Okay. It was only the failure of having enough funds in a report and the accidental posting of a report that brought things to light and caused the bankruptcy, a collapse of FTX in 2022. Um, the fact that the actual investors involved are not going to get their full money is terrible. Okay. However, this judge has put things in place that would actually protect them and actually get them some of that money. Okay. So the prosecutor pushed back on the defense when they said that Samuel Bankman-Fried really didn't do anything to harm anyone and that he was a good soul with only good intentions and that there were no actual real victims here, that everybody could get paid back eventually in the system no matter what. But Nicholas Roos, who was on the prosecution for Thursday, actually came. He said, "It's the criminality is there. It's on a massive scale. It was huge. It was pervasive in all aspects of transactions between FTX, Alameda, and all the other trading companies. Several other attorneys that are doing streams on this in several of the ones that are involved in crypto and legalities have said that this bringing this case to light actually points to the fact that crypto does need to be regulated in some ways so less people get hurt because there are some loopholes there that allow them to do certain things that can be damaging to the investors, especially in the non-disclosure or the non-securing of certain assets. Okay. As the judge said, there was a risk that this man will be in a position to do this again, which is why, under the federal rules, Judge Kaplan has decided he shall serve 25 years. And under federal guidelines, that means he has to serve 21 of them before he'll be eligible for any kind of parole. Okay. He also advised that he could serve that sentence close to where his parents live in the San Francisco Bay Area in a low or medium security institute. After all, this is a white collar crime. He is no real threat physically to anyone. Okay. He did say that the prosecution asking the 40 to 50 years was a little bit much. Okay. But he did put restitution at $11 billion. Okay, we know of the 8 billion that FTX was short in paying their investors, but in all of the conversations that were going back and forth and the testimony that came out in trial, the judge aggregated another 3.6 and 1.8 to put on top of that, uh, based on where in other areas that restitution needed to be made for other investors between Alameda. Okay. It's a serious offense. It is landmarking because this is one of the biggest ones besides Bernie Madoff's MLM scheme, his Ponzi scheme that got him the 120 years. You know, 25 years is a lot. It's absolutely a lot. But people are actually complaining. There's a lot of talk out there. You know, Isn't it worrying that he thinks he did nothing wrong when he obviously did? Shows some sort of disconnect. Exactly. And I think, and the judge did mention that. Okay, he said that the fact that he thinks that there are no real victims, that he's just saying he's sorry that people's money being returned to them was delayed and etc. But it was much more than that. Much, much more than that. Um, these are some of the comments that the judge made in his sentencing, you know. When Murkowski said that there was not, Murkowski, who is actually the attorney, the defense attorney for Samuel Bankman-Fried, said that they didn't have much to say in regards to impact statements or anything. He said that there wasn't anything in his brief. He said that they should go lighter on him. He was a good person. There was no intent or malicious, and that there was not an egregious amount of loss to many. And the judge took exception to that. He's going on down in he said that for reasons well articulated by Mr. Ray, who was the bankruptcy official for FTX, people would get paid back is speculative. So I find the loss amount readily exceeds 550 million, the top tier. I find investors lost 1.7 billion, lenders lost 1.3 billion, and the customers lost 8 billion. And that is how he's coming up with the $11 billion. I'm going to vary downward from the guidelines range, the process we're going through right now. And next, about the number of victims, do you want to be heard? In the defense said, our memo was before we saw the victim impact letters. He said, so you're signaling there's not much merit to the argument you made? You don't have to answer that, said the judge. Kind of snarkily, Judge Kaplan was about that. He said, I'll answer it for you. Your objection is overruled. And he proposed to point out two-point adjustment for use of sophisticated means. I agree with the U.S. for leadership role. On obstruction of justice, I find that Mr. Bankman-Fried's text to former general counsel did in fact constitute attempted witness tampering, and I have made 3 perjury findings based on trial testimony. I find that he gave perjured testimony at trial. He falsely testified that until the fall of 2022, he had no knowledge that Alameda had spent FTX customer funds. And he also falsely testified that he first learned of the $8 billion in October. Finally, he falsely testified that repayment of third-party loans by Alameda would require Alameda to borrow more customer funds from FTX. Now, do counsel want to address those points? In the defense, obviously said, no, I do not. So I think it was the judge made himself clear he was not having it, and there would not be a lighter sentence. The total offense level is 60 on obstruction to support the finding, and there may be more. Once you cross 43, it cannot go higher. The guideline is life in prison, but the maximum is 1,320 months in this case. And I'm giving them that. Are there victims who wish to address the court? There was one a person who traveled there to speak, and he was speaking for a large amount of creditors. His name was Sunil Kaveri. He flew in from London. He spoke about getting the money back, but he also talked about selling of assets, but he was speaking on things that the judge couldn't do anything about. So the judge kind of like rounded him up pretty quick and put it out. He did speak about the number of customers who felt that there was no way out and actually left this world. He made clear that this loss was profound to many, many people. Okay. So, the lawyer, the defense lawyer Murkowski for Samuel Bankman-Fried did say that they would be appealing. They're going to appeal, but they do listen to the victims and they do understand their pain, but they're going to appeal the sentence, the verdict in the sentencing. Murkowski went on to plead for Samuel Bankman. Samuel Bankman-Fried actually spoke and said that Almeida wasn't bankrupt, that FTX was not bankrupt. He doubled down on anything. And he said, I made a lot of mistakes, but that's not how the story ended. Customers weren't paid back. FTX didn't survive. Yeah, customers have been given conflicting claims. That's caused a lot of damage. They could have been paid back. There are enough assets. It's not because of a rise in price of crypto. That hasn't hurt. There just was enough. As Sunil said, the emotional pain. Why haven't they been paid back? There was, to be fair, a liquidity crisis. That was in my part my doing. But this isn't the time or place to tell the full story. Well, when would be, is what I ask. I don't know about you guys, but when would it be? If not now, while you're being sentenced, okay? A good place to start would be the affidavit of Dan Freeberg filed in a bankruptcy court a year ago. Anyway, he's bringing up stuff and still just skirting the whole issue, like they said. Ah. He just talks about how he could have changed it if they didn't arrest him. If he was allowed to actually do stuff and they didn't put everything in bankruptcy. In other words, if they just didn't follow the rules and regulations, everything would have been fine. He said he's not denying the pain that everyone's in. He's just saying he wasn't allowed to fix anything. He feels his hands were tied. The government came through. Nicholas Roos recognized the actual prosecution in the sentencing hearing, and he just reminded everyone that Samuel Bankman-Fried stole $8 billion. It's theft when you take it from one company and give it to another, especially an investment company where people think you're investing their money, not lending it out to other companies. Many lost their life savings. Okay. Many have you know, this was investments. Investments do have risks, but these are against the guidelines, these risks. Many people became so depressed they lost their jobs, they lost interest in things. Many have a fear now of investment. I mean, they brought up a lot of points. Now, when he also reminded the judge that many that steal only 1 billion at a time get 40 or more years for that alone. But there were loans to lenders that went bankrupt. There are customers that went bankrupt, investors that went bankrupt. That they just insisting that they send a message. And the judge did with 25 years. And, this was a very long sentencing hearing. The judge reminded him that most of this was about power and influence. Carolyn Ellison was asked, how did the defendant describe his approach to risk? And her answer was, he said he was risk neutral. He was comfortable as long as positive EV or expected value. So the judge said that a man willing to flip a coin as to the continued existence of life on Earth, Mr. Bankman knew that Almeida was spending customer funds on risky investments, political contributions in Bahamas real estate. The funds were not his to use. End of story. And that's it. So he's just not going to take the I messed up and everything's okay. Well, that's it on Samuel Bankman. Let me just check you guys for some questions in the chat and let me just get caught up here. Oh, hey, Shill. Hey, Couch. It's good to see you. He says bad decisions like other people say, oh, I got caught. Exactly. Hello, Ryan. Is he claiming that he'd made better decisions? He would have ripped off more people and not gotten caught? Well, he's claiming that it seems to be that what he's saying is that if he had been given the time without these pesky regulations of moving money around, that he could have moved it all around and made as long as the customers didn't lose any money, he should be able to do with the money what he wants, apparently. But he doesn't say it like that. He's just not acknowledging that he was loaning out customers' accounts, the money that was given to him to hold for investment. He was putting it all over, and loaning it was not part of the investment profile that he showed them or told them. You have to disclose this stuff. Because he made his parents have to sell their car to cover his bond. Yeah, it was a big bond, I know. Yeah. Sorry you lost all your money. The stock market is a volatile place. Oh me, I'm just off to buy another Ferrari. Exactly. Although he did lead for a very, I mean, he did whatever he wanted, but he wasn't into flashy like that. You know. Would you say that this makes him an a-hole? I would say it does make him a rather clueless a-hole. Yes. He needs to take a little self-reflection there. Yes. Tampering and self-incriminating messages, that's two squares at once. Exactly. For the bingo card. My liquidity crisis is running out of coffee or whiskey. Exactly. Mine too. I don't want to worry about his. And that's what I want to ask the whole chat before we move on to the next person, because I want to make this a kind of quick one. Do you think 25 years was fair, or should he have extra sanctions? I think 25 is pretty good. But I do worry about he'll be young enough when he gets out, and he's quite charismatic, and I worry about what will happen. I worry about what will happen while he's in there, actually. Yeah. Riker says he's a virtuous scammer. Yes, he has everyone's best interest at heart, doesn't he? Yeah. Everybody's best interest at heart while he borrowed their money and did whatever he wanted with it. There are rules and regulations you got to follow when you are responsible for other people's money. Exactly. And I think it's pretty fair. I do too. I don't think they're that strict. People make a lot of money doing it the right way, the legal way. They still make lots and lots of money. But yeah, apparently he says that this whole thing was he wasn't given enough time to fix the issue. It wouldn't have been a problem. Doesn't matter that he was taking money from all the different companies. No, not at all. Okay. Next. Okay. Next. Our favorites. Yeah, here we go. Not so much, right? Our favorites. Andrew and Tristan are at it again. Well, there was all of this hubbub over the last 3 months about Andrew Tate and Tristan Tate getting their assets back. And when we actually spoke on this before, we said, well, yes, they did win the appeal to be able to have a remotion in the court to have them look at it again because of a procedural error on some of the dates on when things were seized and things like that. They did win that. That's true. But it did not release their assets. What it did was give them permission to go back to the lower court and plead their case, which they did. And again, the lower court denied them, cleared up all the procedural errors, and are keeping the assets based on the charges. So all of that false reporting for like 3 months, they were going back about the big win that the Tates got. The Romanian court was wrong to seize his assets. They have nothing. It means the charges aren't legit. They just went on and on and on about it. Nope. The court has denied it again. Now, Tristan Tate has recently been all over doing little clips of interviews, here and there, and making squawking noises about the DIICO2 delaying the trial. That is not true. What's going on in Romania is the preliminary caucus in the Budapest court, that they go over all the evidence to make sure the trial will be legit and legal, that everything was garnered in a legal fashion, that there's enough evidence to proceed to trial, because they make sure that all their ducks in a row first. This is standard Romanian protocol. It is what they do. And Tristan and Andrew are well aware of this. And actually, if you go and look, every time something got moved and delayed, it was at the request of the Tates and their defense team, not the DIICOT. Now it's due to come out of this preliminary process within the next couple of weeks, and then we should probably get a trial date. So we're going to look forward to that. The other news on Andrew Tate is that there's a little bit of reporting going on that he and Aiden Ross just had a stream and it just didn't really go very well in regards to I don't know, it just looked like there was a bit of pushback from Aiden that we don't normally see, and so people were talking about it a little bit here and there, and so I thought I'd just give you the links to it if you wanted to check it out. It was this person did a 1 minute video really quick on it, and then and then here is the link to the full stream that was done. Okay, if you want to check it out with the pushback, if you're into that. I enjoyed it a little tiny bit, I will have to admit, because I like to see people push back on Andrew Tate when he's being a bully. Okay, but Aiden Ross is not exactly the sharpest tool in the shade sometimes. And there was a lot of that going on too. Okay. The others on Tate. Also, Andrew Tate in Tate News has been complaining that multiple witnesses in the Tate brothers case have been have told them to inform them if the Tates have contacted them or through third parties in case of violation or restrictions set by the judge. That is because they are under investigation for witness tampering already. Okay, they they are under investigation for witness tampering. So, like, of course, they say they are trying to remand the Tates back in pretrial detention if they violate conditions. Yes, if you tamper with witness, they are under investigation for bribing and tampering on witnesses. That is the second set of charges that they are looking at coming through. That's part of it. Okay. The news about the assets being staying remain came right from a Tate spokesperson. So, like, there's no doubt that that actually happened in Romania. That person is in Romania with them. Hi, Sean, nice to see you. Okay, that all right. I'm gonna any questions in regards to Tate? Let me just look in here, and I got one more quick. Bryan Kohberger, there was a little bit of stuff going on. We haven't talked about that one very much. You mean Samuel Bankman-Fried? I agree with you, Liam, or Andrew Tate. If he's going to be doing what he's been doing. Mm-hmm. Hi, Mrs. Cassandra. Good to see you too. Imagine complaining that there are conditions upon your pretrial release. The gall, exactly. Like, you're not supposed to tamper with the witnesses. You're not supposed to leave Romania. All of that. But hey, anyway, let's go on to Bryan Kohberger because they like Tate just gives me a headache. He's giving me a headache. Two things with Bryan Kohberger that is going on right now. First of all, motion to dismiss. He's been denied by the Idaho Supreme Court of Appeals. Okay. And they didn't give much of a reason. They just denied the defenses. You know that they were going with the grand jury, trying to get the motion to throw the grand jury's indictment out. And Taylor's been working on it with Rob Logstein. They've been saying about probable cause versus reasonable doubt in getting the indictment. In the lower court, the judge said, nope, that's just the way it's done. We've been doing probable cause. There was definitely enough evidence there. There's nothing wrong with the jury process here. They wanted the Idaho Supreme Court, state Supreme Court, to listen to it. They denied it. However, they did keep both the motion from the prosecution and the defense in regards to it under seal, like a lot of things in the Kohberger case. Okay, which brings us to the next part of this update. In the case of Bryan Kohberger, there was a lot of pretrial like media stuff before when he was getting arrested and all of that. Since then, there have been almost all of the motions have been under seal back and forth. Um, the judge has done his best to keep the pretrial media hubba bubba, all of that to a minimal. Okay, we don't get to see evidence, this, that, or the other thing. We're not looking at all of the files. He's been doing a lot of stuff under seal and protecting the process. And here's the problem: Latau County, Moscow, the city where the actual murders were, is almost half of the population of the county. And, well, defense has filed a motion to move the venue, maybe to Ada County or elsewhere, saying that Bryan Kohberger cannot get a fair trial. Well, recently, which just became available Monday, but it happened the week before, Judge actually put a gag order on both the defense and the prosecution to not speak to the potential jury pool at all. At all. And I'm wondering, like, where did that come from? Well, I watched a couple of the legal channels, and there's a couple of things. I mean, it's not unusual to try to protect the jury pool. First of all, the defense and the prosecution shouldn't be talking to protect prospective jurors at all. Like, it just shouldn't happen. They shouldn't be doing a PR campaign out there. They shouldn't be doing anything like that. Okay. But it's not unusual if you make a change of venue. Some attorneys are reporting that when you put in a motion for a change of venue, you have to justify it with why, and that perhaps a third party polling agency had been hired to actually ask how much they've heard about the trial out there so that they had numbers to put in their motion. I don't know. Maybe one or the other side had done something like that. But when it was reported that people in the area were getting calls asking that they'd heard about the trial and etc., the judge put a gag order. He said neither of them can talk until they have an actual hearing about this on, I think it's April 15th. Oh, we're going to have a hearing in regards to, this gag order, why it happened. We don't know exactly why he put it in place because everything's sealed, the motions beforehand. But hopefully we will get to actually hear the hearing and find out what's going on April 15th, and there'll be more clarification on who gets to do what. But there it is said that prosecution did ask for the gag order. So something they were complaining about, something the defense was doing, I'm not so sure. I want to hear it from the judge what actually was going wrong, because the legal channels that I've been watching and the few people that I did speak with said that, polling happens. Like, it's as long as it's not them asking specific questions, if it's random, like, how else are you going to prove on whether you should have the trial in that area or not? Like, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I just know the jury process is sacred. In any time that comes up, it gets to be a big hullabaloo with everybody involved. Um, so we'll find out more on that. But basically, that's the update on Bryan Kohberger, is that they were denied for getting the indictment completely tossed, which would just toss everything and make everybody start all over again, which means he would have to be recharged. They would have to bring everything to the grand jury or preliminary hearing again to make sure that there's enough evidence to go forward with trial. The whole thing would have to start all over again if the indictment got tossed. But it didn't. And they did not get a lot of information as to why. Okay. Oh, hi, Turtle Moves. Okay. The Rocky Couch, that's good. I'm going to call the juror chatting bad legal manners. It certainly is, if they were out there, like, doing anything. Well, prosecution got upset about something, but we don't know. We don't know. All right. I think on that, if you guys don't have any questions on Kohberger, I'm going to call you. I've got an hour break, almost an hour. I'm going to be back at 8:30. I've got a new case I want to bring you up to speed on in regards to Minnesota versus Adam Fravel in the disappearance and homicide of Madeline Kingsbury. And that will be at 8:30. But on that, I'm going to actually say good night, everybody. I mean, not good night, but see you soon if any of you are around. Hey, Jin. Um, I'll see you at 8:30. Thank you for being here and listening to this really quick update on three really bad guys. Okay.